Good afternoon, everyone. Zeke, you want to kick us off?
And the President's going to give remarks in about an hour or so on the unidentified objects that have been shot down, the Chinese spy surveillance program of the balloon. There's been that interagency review process on the way for last week. Is it safe to assume now that the President's speaking that review is now done? And should we expect to hear about these new procedures that you've been previewing the last couple of days?
So let me just first say I'm not going to get ahead of the President in his remarks, which will happen momentarily. He will speak about the United States response to the recent aerial objects. That includes our decisive response to China's high-altitude surveillance balloon, and the President putting the safety and security of the American people always first. So that's what you'll hear from him, but I'm not going to get ahead of the details. As far as it relates to the interagency team, they are continuing to work intensively on putting forth parameters to what, this is something that the President asked them to do. So that is continuing. That work is continuing, but you will hear from the President, and he'll give an update on what has occurred over the last several days.
Just one more on a foreign policy topic. China yesterday warned or threatened, I guess, of countermeasures against U.S. entities in response to the shoot-down of their spy balloon. Today, they sanctioned 2 U.S. defense contractors. Is there any response there, and what does this mean for the bilateral relationship?
So the way that we see that there's the sanctions that you just mentioned is that these are symbolic and measures and unnecessary. That's how we view them. And look, China can speak to their own actions, but again, we see them as symbolic and unnecessary. Go ahead.
Thanks, Karine. There's been some reporting about this, but it would be great to hear about it from you. When did the U.S. first begin tracking the balloon? Was it when it first took off from Hainan Island?
So that's a good question. I know that the Pentagon has answered that before, actually laid out a timeline of when that all occurred. I don't have that in front of me to share with all of you, so I would point you to the Pentagon. And so, again, they've had detailed information on the tracking of the balloon and when it was first, I guess, seen or visible to them, and also laid out when the President was informed. I just don't have that it's in great detail. I just don't have that in front of me at this time.
And has the intelligence community now concluded that it likely began heading east but veered off course, and that's why it ended up traversing the United States?
So look, I want to be really mindful here because I have heard this before. I don't have any specifics to share on that. You're talking about the Hawaii and the Guam piece to this. So I just want to be super careful there, and I would probably refer you to the Pentagon. And what we think that they are doing is they are deflecting. They're coming up with excuses and trying to spin this. And at the end of the day, their surveillance balloon was indeed in our airspace, and they said it was, as you all know, they said it was a potential weather balloon, which it was not, and so it's been very clear. All of the American people, the entire world saw what China did, and it was irresponsible.
Chinese officials were initially not very responsive. For example, when the Secretary of Defense tried to get a hold of them, are they being more responsive now?
So I'll say this: our approach with China is going to continue to be calm, resolute, and practical. And we have said this before: we are going to continue to keep our airways, our communication lines open, and continue to have those conversations as we have been before the China surveillance balloon and after. But look, again, what they did was irresponsible. It is up to China to decide how they want to move forward with this relationship. As you all know, the President and President Xi met at the G20. They said that they would be good actors. They were a country that we can work with. And let's see, are they going to build on that and show that is something that they are willing to do? And that's on them.
But are they picking up the phone? Are they communicating?
I'm not going to go into details on diplomatic conversations or discussion that's currently happening, but I can say that the lines of communication has been open. There has been discussions, like I said, days before the balloon went on its path, and certainly after.
Karine, thank you so much. The Vice President said on China, kind of following up on what Nancy was asking you, I don't think this issue with the Chinese spy balloon has changed relations with China. Does the president agree with that assessment? How is the administration viewing the broader
I mean, it's
relationship?
very much to what I was just saying, what our approach for China is going to continue to be, which is calm, resolute, and practical. We're going to, the president has been very clear, we will continue to keep open lines of communication with China. That has not changed. And we saw China's behavior. It was irresponsible and visible.
Changed in the wake of this, Karine, because we heard a lot of top officials say clearly this was a violation of the U.S. sovereign airspace.
And you've heard us say this from here, too. It was a violation of U.S. airspace, and we have been very clear with our communications with China. That has not changed. You saw how Secretary Blinken postponed his trip to China because of their irresponsible behavior. I don't have a trip to announce from here or when that trip is going to continue. That is something that the secretary is going to decide with the president. But again, we have been very clear. What China did was irresponsible. It was irresponsible actions.
What's the level of expectation that Secretary Blinken will meet with his Chinese counterpart in Munich?
I'm not going to get ahead of that. Like I said, the lines of communication has continued to be open, and we will continue to have those discussions. And again, and as I mentioned moments ago, you're going to hear from the president. He's going to speak very decisively about our response to China's high-altitude surveillance balloon. So you'll hear from the president, and he'll lay that out.
Can you give an update on efforts to recover debris from the 3 unidentified floating objects?
So as we have mentioned before, because of the weather condition, it has been very difficult to get the debris, and so we are allowing the Pentagon and the Department of Defense to do their work in trying to bring the debris that is clearly in the water to the ground, and so we just don't have much to share there. But what I can say is, when I've been asked what are they exactly, while we can't definitively say without analyzing the debris what these objects were so far, we haven't seen any indication of anything that points specifically to the idea that these 3 objects were part of the PRC surveillance program or that they were definitively involved in external intelligence collection efforts against the United States. We can also rule out that they were operated by the U.S. government. Right now, the intelligence community is considering, and I've said this before, you've heard my colleagues from NSC say this before as well, is that they could be tied to commercial or research entities and benign. Efforts are actively underway at all sites to find what is left of these objects so that we can better understand them. The president has directed his team to make sure that we're briefing Congress on a regular basis, as you have seen us do the last 2 days. But again, because of the weather, because it is February and it has been very difficult to get the debris from the objects, it has taken us some time.